a pledge of allegiance. Before we get rolling this evening, and we have a pretty big agenda, I wanted to introduce our newest member on the dais, none other than Commissioner Steve Varenhorst. In case he looks familiar to you, that's because he's already served 2 terms on the Planning Commission, and we're delighted that after the mandatory 1-year holding period, he's decided to return to us. The Radnor Board of Commissioners did vote unanimously to reappoint him at their reorg meeting yesterday. He's back with us today to serve for another 4 years. So in addition to his service to our board, Steve is a nationally recognized architect. He has a project portfolio that includes significant projects in the institutional, industrial, and multifamily, as well as some single-family residential space, with some noteworthy projects, such as the upcoming Philadelphia Ballet Campus and the Aramark Global Headquarters. Steve and his firm, they were retained to create master plans for projects such as Suburban Square, Venice Island, and LaSalle University, amongst others. So please join me with a round of applause for Steve Varenhorst. Welcome him back to the Radnor Planning Commission. All right. Also at their reorg meeting yesterday, the Board of Commissioners also appointed Commissioner Brubaker to his 2nd term and Commissioner Dow to his full 1st term. So we're pleased to spend the next 4 years with both of you. And finally, I want to thank my fellow commissioners for allowing me the opportunity to, and the honor to serve as your chair since October 2022. And I think serving as a volunteer with local government is, it's as rewarding as it is honorable. I'm really, truly humbled that you allowed me to facilitate some of the important conversations regarding Radnor planning and development in this town. So that being said, it is time to pick our new chair for 2025. I'm happy to make the motion to extend the nomination to Lane Vines as your next chair. Can I get a second on that motion? Second by Brubaker. Are there any other nominations for chair? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. It's unanimous. Chairman Vines, welcome as the next chair. We're going to take a minute to just swap seats.
Okay, first I'd like to thank my fellow commissioners for their support, and it has been both an honor and a pleasure to work with you in serving the township on the commission. I look forward to doing so further as chair. Second, I want to recognize and thank MJ Fruman for his leadership over the past 2 years as chair of the commission and his work as a member of the commission over the past 3 years. Without fail, MJ provides thorough vetting of each of the projects and other agenda items that we review and analyze. And in doing so, he's facilitated a collegial environment for all to be heard while guiding thoughtful discussions with keen analysis and insight. His work has been exemplary, and it provides me with not only guidance, but a role model to emulate. However, the best part is that MJ's not going anywhere, and he's going to continue as a commissioner, and most certainly will continue with being an invaluable colleague. So I would ask that we give MJ a round of applause for his work and contributions. Okay, the next order of business is the selection of a vice chair. And along those lines, I would like to nominate Mike LaHoda. Mike has served as a member of the commission since 2021 and is a longtime resident of Wayne. Are there any other nominations? Could I get a second to the nomination?
Second.
Okay, second by Nat. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Mike LaHoda is now the vice chair. The next item is the appointment of a shade tree liaison. The shade tree liaison outgoing, excuse me. So for nominating the shade tree liaison, I would like to nominate MJ Fruman. Previously, the liaison position had been held by Matt Golis, whose term just ended in December of 2024, and suffice it to say, whoever takes this position will have big shoes to fill, and I'm confident MJ can do that. Can I have a second to that nomination? Second by Kunda. Are there any other nominations for the shade tree liaison? Okay, let's have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. MJ, you are now the shade tree liaison. Okay. The next agenda item is the Zoning Hearing Board Appeal 3201 for the property at 245 Willow Avenue. Here, the applicant wishes to return the previously consolidated property at 245 Willow to again be two separate properties with addresses at 245 and 247 Willow Avenue. Accordingly, this is a request for a subdivision of the current property. The applicant reports an improvement to the property, which is described as an addition stair to the front porch at 247 Willow side of property. With regard to the previous decisions by the zoning hearing boards, reported that in 2021, the applicant consolidated lots 245 and 247 into one property with the address at 245 Willow. At that time, the zoning hearing board granted relief for a front yard setback to allow front porch so the door to the home could be on the front of the house. It's reported that the Radnor Code Section 28035A8 allows for a 40% maximum impervious surface. The current impervious is listed at 40.2% for the lots combined. If the approval is given, the impervious would break down at 40% for 247 Willow, at 40.9% for 245 Willow. So first question, is there a representative for the applicant here?
I am John McDonald, and this is Bridget McDonald.
Okay, and are you the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. Could you just describe what the request is and the basis for the request?
Sure. We've been residents of Radnor for 24 years, residing in 245 Willow. In 2016, we were given the opportunity to buy 247 Willow, which we did, and then consolidated it in 2021. Unfortunately, in 2023, we divorced. And in order for Bridget and the children to be able to afford to stay, we're subdividing once again, returning it back to what it was, so that they can live there until whenever.
Okay.
So that's essentially the genesis of what happened.
Okay. Have the stairs been put in already, or is that something to be put in?
Not yet. They will be. It is yet to be put in. It has
Okay.
not been put in yet.
And that will be put in on tell me which side it'll be
Right,
put on.
so they currently are, the access to the front porch is on the 245 side currently.
Mhm.
So we would be adding the stair on the 247 side.
And when you add the stairs, the 247 side will be at 40%
That's correct.
impervious?
That's correct.
Okay. So can you just explain when I guess in 2021, were you under a 40% impervious limitation?
Well, the limitation, the requirement still existed, but we didn't meet it back then either. We haven't changed, the impervious isn't changing.
Okay.
Wait, let me step back a second. We did put the front porch on, and with the front porch, it brought it to the 40.2%, which so with the front porch, it exceeded it. However, it exceeded that prior to the front porch. So we actually have been, since 2001 when we purchased the property, we've been whittling away at the impervious. It was, I think, like at 46% when we first bought the property. And we've been reducing it throughout. So when we, in 2021, when we put the front porch on, we removed impervious elsewhere to be able to offset for the front porch and actually reduce the impervious.
Okay.
Because there had been 2 side porches on the twin for access into the side of the homes on either side.
Okay.
And so we demolished them. They were pretty sizable, big concrete features. So we demolished those and put the front porch on the front of the house.
Okay. So when you bought the property, it was over the impervious limit.
That's correct.
When you consolidated the property in 2021, it was over the limit.
Right.
And now, since 2021, you haven't created further impervious?
No,
And all you're asking for is that the property now be divided back into 2 parcels?
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I guess first, staff, do you have any comment, questions?
I do not, Mr. Brown.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions?
I
Please.
do. So acknowledging that Willow is certainly, I'm going to say, I don't know, but I can't say every property, but Willow is definitely in the floodplain, or at least most of it.
Yeah, the south side, yes.
So you're over the impervious currently, trying to, and you're saying you got some, I mean, in general, we don't give credit for, if you take something away and move it, you don't get that credit back, is my general analysis. But is there any stormwater management on the property, or are you going to add any as part of this project?
No, there is not, and we have no plans to add it, no.
Okay.
Did you obtain permits when you constructed the front porch
Oh, absolutely.
at the
yes.
time?
Oh, yes.
And there was an impervious calculation done by the township?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Does anyone from the public wish to speak? Okay, seeing none. I would like to see if we can have a motion. Would someone like to make a motion for a recommendation that the zoning board approve the request?
I'll make that motion. So in the matter of zoning hearing board appeal 3201-245 Willow Ave, I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the zoning hearing board approval of the proposed project.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? 1. Okay. Motion, or the recommendation passes.
Thank you very much.
Then, just for the record, the nay was from Lahota.
Yep. Okay, next item, approval of the minutes of December 2, 2024 meeting. The minutes were distributed to the commissioners in advance of today's meeting. Does any commissioner have any proposed changes, corrections to the minutes as distributed? Okay, hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve. Okay, motion by Kunda and second by Nat. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous? The next agenda item is the submission of a sewage facilities planning module for 12 Luella Court. According to the December 5, 2024 letter from Gannett Fleming, the applicant for the project has prepared a sewage facilities planning module to be submitted to the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. The applicant is proposing a change in the use from a storage space to a hair salon on the first floor of the existing building. The project is proposing a flow of 525 GPD. Component 4A must be completed by the Township Planning Commission prior to the planning module submission being adopted by a resolution at a Board of Commissioners meeting. Mr. Phillips, could you please just summarize the project, the application, what we're being requested?
I believe you just did.
Okay.
It's just the conversion of an existing building requiring a planning module being filed with the DEP. What's in front of you is a document that says that this is in conformance with the township zoning. So all you need to do is sign that.
Okay. Do any members of the Planning Commission have a question? All right. Could I have a motion to approve?
I think the chair, you're asking for a motion to allow you
To sign.
to sign the document. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous? I will sign those papers and return them to Mr. Norsini, Township Engineer. Okay. One announcement with regard to application 213220 for land development at 3 Meadowcrest Road. At the request of the applicant, this item has been removed from this evening's agenda. Okay, the next agenda item is the consideration of application 212752 for land development at 1300 Eagle Road. As reported, the project includes the expansion of the existing Eastern State Gymnasium and Eagle Learning Center buildings, additions to and reconfiguration of the existing parking areas, and construction of a new internal access drive for the gymnasium expansion. The new driveway will limit access to the gymnasium parking via Thomas Drive, thereby removing vehicles from Fenimore Road, local residential street. The proposed improvements are to accommodate existing students, will have no impact on the enrollment of the university. Here, the applicant seeks approval of a preliminary land development plan. As part of the consideration, we've received letters from Gannett Fleming, dated December 20, 2024, and Gilmore & Associates, dated December 27, 2024. Looks like we have a representative for the applicant.
Thank you. Nick Cornelia, representing the applicant, Eastern University. As was stated, this is a preliminary plan. The board will see it again on final plan. We've revised the plans and actually completed the TIS, which was a major point. And you'll notice in the Gilmore letter, it does say that the TIS has been completed and there are no additional comments as a result of the TIS. I recall that we didn't meet last time. It was continued to address some of these comments and has been addressed. There is one waiver being requested, and that's the standard 500 feet within the property line indicating monuments, and that has been achieved by an aerial photograph. As I mentioned, if you look at the Gannett Fleming letter, most of these are either acknowledged or will be addressed during final, such as erosion and sedimentation controls, stormwater. They were the items that were brought out on the pages 2 through 5. The rest of them, as I mentioned, are either acknowledged or will be addressed at final plan. There was one question I recall from a neighbor is how far the building, the new gym building, would be from the right-of-way, and I believe it's 392 feet, is that what? Just under 400 feet. And there were some other comments from the neighbors as well. I don't know if Rob needs to address it or if the neighbors want to ask questions. I see some of them are here.
So, Mr. Phillips, do you have any comments?
I have nothing to add, no.
So I had one question for you. In your letter, I think it is dealing with section 255-54. There's a reference to the fire company, and it's referenced as Paoli Fire Company. Should that be Radnor?
I believe it should, and I was going to ask Mr. Lambert about that, but that was in their response, but correct, it's the Radnor Fire Company.
It's Radnor.
Okay, so it's Radnor. Are there any issues on unresolved questions with regard to the emergency services?
So, Mr. Cornelian, in Mr. Drummond's letter, it said, as soon as you had something from Radnor Fire Company, that would be forwarded on. Did you receive that? Have we received that?
Rob?
We haven't received.
No, we were planning to meet with them after the preliminary. We'll go over the whole plan, make sure there's no plan changes, but if anything, we're providing better access at this point.
So, Mr. Vines, we would request that that would then be a condition, that they meet that requirement of the Radnor Fire Company.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Drummond, do you have any questions or concerns?
We just spoke about the one concern we still had. There are some other things that could be handled during final design, such as the final roadway geometry. Other than that, I don't have any other comments.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have questions? Okay. So I do want to at least bring up one issue, and this might be in advance of someone else coming up, resident-wise, to the podium. We have been advised as to my understanding an ingress-egress construction piece to this project, that there have been large tractor trailers, which have, in at least one instance, backed up onto a neighbor's property. Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of it backing up onto neighbor's property. I know that some of the construction vehicles have to enter through this way. It's very limited. The entrance is very limited, and it just deals with construction vehicles that really need to enter through this way. I believe Mr. Norsini's aware of it. We try to advise him ahead of time as to when it's going to occur.
Okay. So along those lines, two things kind of occur to me. One is not to let that happen, and two is to have communication with the residents so that when something happens, there's a dialogue between Eastern and the residents, and they're not coming, directly to the township or to the planning commission asking for some relief, as to those type of issues.
I believe we can advise the residents ahead of time as to when we anticipate that those trucks would be using that entrance, so that they're aware of it. Again, I see the point about so that they don't have to call the township regarding it.
So that's one. One is what happens if something happens. The other is this something that you think can be avoided from happening?
It's very infrequent. It's really the only way that we can access the site for large vehicles. Otherwise, we're dragging it all the way through campus with narrow turns. So that's really the reason for it. It's not, it's, as I said, it's very limited. Rob, I know we provided a list previously as to it. I don't know how many vehicles are involved in it. It's the weight of the vehicle?
Before Mr. Lambert speaks, I think we've heard multiple times from the neighbors about this project, and the reviews on Eastern have been fantastically favorable. You are known as a good neighbor, but I'm referring to particularly the letter that we received on January 1st from a Brian Edmonds, who referred to tractor trailers traversing Fairview Drive. And let's just say that this is not in the purview of the Planning Commission to intervene in the applicant's business, but this is reflective of perhaps a breakdown in communication between the applicant and the residents. So we would respectfully ask that Eastern University and the neighbors have a better communication regarding traffic flow and whatever traffic occurs here. I believe, and Mr. Edmonds will probably, I don't want to read the tea leaves, come up to the dais and speak on this himself, but the request here is that Fairview is not used. Whether that's practical or not is not up to me, but I think a dialogue is in order here.
Sure. I mean,
and it should occur offline.
I have no problem at all with an offline dialogue regarding it and when we anticipate it, that it would occur. As I said, it's very minimal.
You know, maybe a flagman could be there when large trucks are coming in to monitor the movement of the truck and make sure they don't run over curbs and things like that.
Yeah, I was not aware of it backing onto someone's property, and that should not occur. I agree.
Yeah, we're not going to do management of your construction practices, obviously, but this is a very strong suggestion from us. Thank you.
Okay, members of the public, does anyone wish to speak?
So thank you. I'm Brian Edmonds. I'm the resident who submitted that email to you concerning the construction activity. So that happened on literally the day after the previous planning
Mr.
commission.
Edmonds, where do you live?
23 Fairview Drive.
Okay, thank you.
23 Fairview Drive. So literally that event took place the day after the previous planning commission meeting where we first raised the concern. And the concern is really twofold. One, we talked about the property damage that occurred at that time, but there also is a safety concern that I have for the neighborhood. So there are kids in this neighborhood ranging from newborns to middle schoolers who frequently are going back and forth on Fairview Drive, going over to Eastern, because Eastern has certainly welcomed us on their campus as well, which we appreciate. And I know that I did send some pictures along to kind of show you what it was. It was probably an hour-long evolution to get two trucks in that drive. It really was. And they sat there, they completely blocked the road for quite some time, trying to figure out how to get in. Eastern has actually demolished part of their stone entryway in order to gain access to it, and now there's major tree work going on, which I don't know is related to future construction. At the time, at the last meeting, it was a short-term duration because they were building their bridge that will bring it up to the roadway on Eastern up to the gym. But it was later confirmed. They did reach out to me after that and said that will be maintained throughout the construction activity for the gym, which would be a much more long-term evolution. So, prior to that, we've been residents there since about 2010 or so. Eastern had actually installed bollards on one of those entrances to eliminate traffic from Fairview Drive onto the campus. And now that access way allows traffic from Eastern on Fairview Drive into the main campus, which was kind of agreed upon that that wasn't going to happen when they put the bollards up. So a lot of concerns around that. I would like to understand what the other options are. I understand there's some weight concerns, but there are also ways to mitigate those as well. So the concern with the gym construction is it's not a short term. The gym construction is going to go on for a long period of time. And I don't know if that can effectively be managed using Fairview Drive as an entrance. So that was my concern. Thank you.
Mr. Vines, could I ask, perhaps the township could meet with the residents in Eastern outside of this meeting to go specifically over this issue?
That would be great. Thank you.
So Eastern has my email, and I can make sure the others do. We'll set something up and see what we can do.
Please.
George Packer, 27 Fairview Drive, St. David's, PA. Been a resident there for a while. My question would be, the wooden bridge, which, Rob, is the problem, right, with getting construction vehicles of weight.
When you say the wooden,
So when you come in off Eagle Road. Yeah, so if you come off Eagle Road, there's a bridge that has a weight limit of 14 tons, maybe?
a little bit more than that.
A little bit more, but whatever, apparently that's the problem, correct?
Correct.
Well, as a resident of 27 Fairview, my question to the school would be, gee, you seem to have a whole lot of money going in to do artificial fields, new gym, whatever. Why don't we beef up that bridge, replace that bridge with something capable of holding the weight, not only of construction vehicles, buses, trucks, Cisco trucks that go, and then that would eliminate all the traffic on Fairview and Fenimore. I know it's a boatload of money, and it's not my money. It's America, where everybody wants somebody else to spend their money. So, did anybody look into it to see how much it would be? Council? No. And it wasn't my lawn. It wasn't my lawn this time, Nick. I'm just, it's crazy expensive. Did anybody look in to see how expensive?
So could you just direct your comments to
Yes,
us, and
sorry.
then we'll let them respond.
In all fairness to George, we've known each other for probably over 40 years. So
Yes,
that's why-
closing on 50, but who's counting? But anyway, it was just that the obvious solution, if money were no object, they have a bridge that doesn't hold the weight. If it held the weight, all of their traffic could enter off of Eagle Road, and none of this would be an issue. I'm just bringing that up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would mimic off of MJ's comment that it's not really our job to fix this project, but to what George says, and that would be expensive, yes. You could also bring in shorter trailers that don't weigh 80,000 pounds, they only weigh 40,000 pounds. You'd have to bring in 3 times as many, but that might actually be less expensive than rebuilding the bridge.
Any other public comment? No. Mr. Cornelia, do you wish to say anything further?
I have nothing further, and I agree with Steve's comment about better communications and meeting with the neighbors and Eastern University.
Okay, commissioners, any further comments? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the preliminary plan?
Sure, I'll make that motion. So in the matter of application 212752, land development, 1300 Eagle Road, Eastern University, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval, recommend preliminary final approval.
Did we want to make that conditional?
Yes, so I think what I'd like to do in this motion is to...
It's not for, it's only for preliminary.
Yes. Did I not say that? Preliminary?
You said preliminary fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, preliminary approval. So let me redo the motion. In the matter of application 212752, Land Development, 1300 Eagle Road, Eastern University, I'd like to make a motion for preliminary land development approval recommendation, subject to all the conditions of the consultant review letters. Is that sufficient, Mr. Norsini?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Actually, it wasn't a condition, it was just a statement. So if we could, in reading Damon's review, it was noted that that information would be forwarded on. So if we could, the item about the consultant review letters along with meeting the requirements of Radnor Fire Company for access egress or something like that.
What Mr. Norsini said.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So we have all in favor with the exception of Commissioner Kunda, who is abstaining. Okay, the next item is the application 213602 for land development at 302-306 East Lancaster Avenue. The applicant seeks final land development approval. This is a proposed development of two properties at the southeast corner of East Lancaster Avenue and Aberdeen Avenue. The two lots will be consolidated as part of the project. The project would then replace two existing retail gas stations that are operated by Sunoco and BP, and which currently operate a motor vehicle repair shop and car wash, respectively. Here, the applicant is proposing to construct a one-story building with 4,687 square feet of retail for a Wawa store, which would have 12 gas pumps. Notably, this project has received preliminary approval through an order and opinion of the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania, dated April 11, 2024. So as such, based on the April 11, 2024 court order, the preliminary plan of February 28, 2019 has already been approved. As part of our consideration, we've received letters from Gannett Fleming dated December 23, 2024, and from Gilmore and Associates dated December 27, 2024. Do we have a representative for the applicant?
Thank you, Nick Cornelia, representing the applicant, which is Wayne Property Acquisitions. Some of you may not have been on this board. I don't know if anyone was. A couple of you were? Okay. When this started, it started 6 years ago, back in 2018. That's when the applicant submitted a preliminary land development plan. The plan called for the merger of the two lots that you see there and the removal of the existing car wash and the existing automobile repair, consolidating into one lot with a retail store with gas pumps. It eliminated a number of nonconformities, such as the nonconforming use of the car wash and nonconforming use of the automobile repair shop. It eliminated nonconformities as to curb cuts. There were 6 curb cuts on that property, and as you're well aware, if you ever entered them, they're pretty long. There were violations as to the setbacks that were nonconforming. The buffer strip was nonconforming. And also there was no stormwater management. And of course now we are complying with all stormwater management requirements of the township. During the process, alternate plans were submitted to the board, you may recall. None of those were acceptable. We went back and eventually the Board of Commissioners denied the preliminary plan in June of 2019. So again, we're talking over 5 years ago now. The landowner filed appeal to Common Pleas Court. Common Pleas Court ruled in favor of Wayne Property Acquisitions and said that the preliminary plan would be approved. The neighbors, the interveners, and the township appealed to Commonwealth Court. Commonwealth Court again affirmed the decision of the Court of Common Pleas. That was back in 2023. Thereafter, the township and the interveners again asked for a petition for allowance of appeal to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. That was denied by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. We're here today on final plan approval. The preliminary plan has been approved by the court. The court has also determined that all waivers requested in the preliminary plan were acceptable and approved. So really what we're dealing with here today is final plan approval. As you know, final plan approval deals with technical issues. We're not here to relitigate the use, relitigate the buildings, or anything of that nature. We're here to discuss certain final plan requirements: sedimentation and erosion control, sewer plan, landscaping and grading, improvement construction plan. That's really what we're here to talk about this evening as to final plan. We do have the review letters from the township. We will address those. I have Eric Britz, the project engineer from Bowler. We have Matt Hammond, the traffic engineer from TPW and Traffic Planning and Design, TPD, excuse me. And what I would like to do initially is just quickly review the letters, and I'll call up our engineers and our experts to further determine those issues. The first letter is from Gannett Fleming, and the first comment is a sewage facilities plan, and actually the DPW has determined that planning modules are not required in this instance, basically because you have a car wash, here already that uses a great volume of water. The other item would be the lighting, the outside lighting, and we would comply with that. Particularly in regards to the neighboring residential properties, there would be no spillover. Neighboring properties, Eric can discuss further the lighting plan as we have it. Basically, everything else on here is just a will comply or an acknowledgement, such as the street trees. We have not proceeded to shade tree yet. We will need to proceed there. Should be this month sometime. Certainly number 5 here, the non-residential institutional uses. My understanding, and Steve will have to go through this, but my understanding is that the retail store is less than 5,000 square feet. Therefore, the open space payment may not be required, but that's something we can discuss further. And then, of course, the stormwater items, there are a couple design standards they put on here, and another comments regarding elevations, which are all will comply requirements before any permits or final plan could be recorded. As to the Gilmore letter, I'll turn that over to Matt, and he can discuss it. But first, Eric, if you want to just quickly go over some of the comments and the plan itself. I believe we kind of addressed everything. Perhaps you can just show the lighting plan and what we're proposing with the lighting plan.
Sure.
And landscaping as well.
Sure. So as Nick noted, it's 2 lots, 1.7 acres total, consolidating into 2. There's an existing Sunoco gas station and a car wash with 11 pumps, 22 fueling stations. We're removing all that. There's also on the existing condition, which I'll pull up here. In the existing condition, there's also 5 vacuums right along the residential property. There is 6 driveways on the property, 4 along Lancaster, 2 along Aberdeen that exist. It's 86% impervious coverage, no stormwater management, and there's some environmental issues on the site that are all proposed to be cleaned up as part of this project. So that's all being removed, being replaced with a single building, retail and gas, reducing, we're proposing 6 pumps, 12 positions, so that reduction of 11 gas pumping positions, 2 buildings down to 1, going from 6 driveways to 2 driveways, 1 on Lancaster and 1 on Aberdeen, reducing the impervious coverage from 86% down to 61.5%, and then adding stormwater management to help with the stormwater that comes off the site. Landscaping and buffering around. Since our last plan, the biggest change that we made since the preliminary approved plan was we had perpendicular parking spaces along Aberdeen, along this residential property line. We've revised that to 4 parallel spaces, increasing that buffer, and also adding now a walkway from Aberdeen directly to the store via a raised crosswalk.
Yeah, and just so, that was requested by the township, that walkway there, and so we decided that we can put it in and complied. Matt will discuss it further as to how it's going to be signaled and how it's going to be raised.
Sure. So landscaping-wise, there's scattered trees throughout the site, a few scattered trees. We're keeping a few of them, keeping 2 along Lancaster and 1 at the corner, multi-tree at the corner of southwest corner of the property along Aberdeen. The rest are being replaced and are being supplemented with new trees. A heavy buffer of evergreens along the rear of the property, along with a fence, solid fence along the back to help buffer the property from the residential neighbors in the back. Street trees along the 2 frontages. There was a comment in the letter with regard to utilizing these 2 existing trees along Aberdeen as part of the street tree count, which we want to maintain those trees. They're decent trees in decent condition, so want to maintain those as well. From a lighting aspect, we are proposing all LED lights. They're at 17-foot total height. Is the highest, 17.5 feet total height is the highest they'll be, less than the 25-foot requirement. They are, for all intents and purposes, full cutoff fixtures. Full cutoff is kind of an antiquated term used with the old metal halide lights, but they are essentially zero uplight fixtures. All lights facing down, nothing sticking underneath that, like the bulb type lights that you'd see, the acorn lights that you'd see where the lights shine out, so nothing like that. So they are full cutoff. One of the comments was, the zoning comment was to provide some more detail for those light fixtures, showing that they're full cutoff, showing when they have other glare protection, showing what those details are, so we'll provide that. But that is all baked into the plan as it stands today. So we will comply with that. As of right now, we are showing some light spill in the southeast corner of the property. That will be cleaned up. So we will comply with that comment, make sure that there's no lighting spilled into the residential property. I think it's at like 0.1, 0.2 foot candles, which is really dim. The minimum for like a crosswalk is 0.5 foot candles, which we'll have, within our site at our crosswalks and things like that. So it's very dim. It'll be easy to fix.
Are you able to zoom in, point out on this diagram where the spillover is, so maybe we can zoom in on it, just to take a look where there's spillover onto residential?
So you'll see you got 0.1, 0.2 foot candles. Again, very minimal lighting, and that will be cleaned up. you'll have, to address the comment. We've sent it back to the lighting designer to address that, put an extra shield on the back of this light, and that will, and potentially, if necessary, extend the fence. I know when he modeled it, he didn't account for the fence, which I think will make a difference. He didn't account for the landscaping, which will also make a difference. So what you're seeing here are numbers assuming that this was a naked site, without trees, without fencing.
And when you say fencing, is this 6-foot fencing?
It's a 6-foot solid fence.
It's 5 foot. I thought it said 5 foot on the plan. In fact, on the fencing issue, I wanted to comment after you determine the height.
6 foot is the maximum required in the zoning code.
Yeah, it's
Mr. Cornelia, there's one portion of the plan that says 6-foot vinyl fence. There's another portion that says post and rail, and I think the other fence is existing. So
Maybe
could
that
you
was-
provide some clarification on that, please?
Yeah, so the post and rail fence is actually up along between the parking and that walkway there, really to kind of separate that parking area from the walkway, to give a nice clean walkway out from Aberdeen to and from the store.
My comment wasn't so much about the height, though. I wanted to ask you about the material. Next door, when you look at the plans behind Verizon, there's a concrete wall. And then when you go behind CVS, there's a block or a concrete wall. And that would mitigate sound transmission from activity on the Wawa site if instead of a wooden fence or a vinyl fence, you had a concrete wall or a block wall. And I don't know if that has come up in discussion with the neighbors or if any neighbors here would like that. It would be not required because it's not on the plan that you got through the courts, but it would be a good gesture, it seems to me, if it's appreciated by the neighboring residential properties.
To your point about the fence, what are the materials of the fence? And does the fence, is it basically paneled fence or is it a solid fence?
It's a solid fence. It's vinyl.
It's vinyl.
Is what the proposal is, and it's 6 feet. So it'll be 6 feet along the entire property line with the neighbors.
I understand that this is something that you're going to clean up, but could you, based on the plan that's in front of us today, and I'm not an engineer, could you just quantify the light intrusion onto the residential property next door on the plan today?
So as it stands today, as I discussed before, it's very minimal lighting. Again, it assumes it was done without the assumption of the fence, without the assumption of the trees that are proposed there. So it assumes nothing to block the light. And it's at 0.1, 0.2 foot candles, very minimal.
I understand. I'm just curious, to which extent does that intrude onto the neighbor's property on the current plan? I understand you'll clean it up.
So approximately 10 feet into the property. Is that what you're looking for? Like the
Yes.
depth? Yeah.
Yes.
Approximately 10 feet into the rear of property, not further than the shed that's there. That's what it's showing at the moment. But again, that's an easy, will comply as far as getting that down to 0 at the property line. So one of the comments was, you have the spill there. We're going to clean that up. There will be 0 foot candles at that property line.
So are you cleaning that up by lowering the height of the lighting post from 17 and a half feet to?
No, I don't think that'll be necessary. There's multiple things they can do, and they're working on it now, so I can only speculate as to what the lighting designer's going to do. I think the first thing he's going to do is propose a different fixture, which has backlight control on each of the photo cells, on each of the LED photo cells that are in there, or each of the LED lights. They'll also, and that will probably in itself clean it up. If not, he's probably also going to model the fence, model the landscaping to see what effect that has. That's to start. If necessary at that point, if we need to push the light down a little bit, maybe that's an option as well. But you got to be careful with that because that could create a hot spot underneath and then weird shadows. And lighting's a little tricky, but it will be cleaned up.
Is there another Wawa store that would have comparable type of lighting with what you envision? This way, as a board, as residents around concerned, legitimately concerned residents, neighbors nearby, that they could look at this thing and hopefully maybe some of the fear and/or anxiety or concern may be dissipated?
I think most of the new Wawas all have, the Wawas with gas have very similar lighting to what you see here. Wawa is proposing a new product. They just came out with late last year that hasn't been constructed yet. Very similar to what you had before, it's just a new, different model, if you will. But yeah, any of the Wawas really have that. Now, depending on what you have at the edge of the property, if they're abutting a residential property, you might have a different type of fixture. It might look exactly the same, but the way that the light functions would be different.
And so last question, from a procedural standpoint, will you have basically a complete set of renderings that will go in front to the planning board, at least for us to review, saying, let's talk about the fence. What are the materials? What are the color? Because the neighbors are going to be, they're going to be living with this.
So the plans do include that information. There's details in the plan set that show that is a 6-foot-high vinyl white fence. So those details are in the plan set.
And so is there plans about how to maintain that fence? So when you have green algae growing on it 3 years out from now from a warm, hot, humid summer, so you guys are going to someone's going to come out and power wash that?
We have maintenance requirements within the plan set as required by the code. I don't think we don't get into any maintenance specifically on the fence. That would be really on Wawa to maintain and take care of along the way.
But where is that? I mean, that's maintenance, but what happens if cutting costs, they don't want to do that? Where is that? My perspective is for the neighbors.
Sure, no, understood.
Very sensitive about.
Understood, and I think, honestly, I don't think it's really written into any maintenance guide. At this point, I don't think I've really never heard of any maintenance for fencing and stuff like that for any project in the 25 years I've been doing this, but
you are abutting someone's very expensive homes in a very, very tight area.
Truly.
So,
it's something that could absolutely be written
That's right.
into the land development agreement.
yeah, I think there should be some sort of a development agreement where, this should be documented.
Yeah, there would be a development agreement, and I can turn to Peter. We know we have a development agreement for all projects in the township, and I know Wawa has their own maintenance requirements as well regarding power washing. But again, that can be addressed in the development agreement as to maintenance, which normally it is addressed in the development agreement.
Who would review that?
It's not going to be a development agreement. If you want ongoing maintenance, it's going to have to be an easement.
I mean, on the other
You know,
side.
it's going to have to be some sort of covenant that's recorded against the property because, the property can change hands, but the fence will still be there. A development agreement only deals with the actual building out of the property.
From a body of, a governing body, who would approve that? Who would review that? Who would negotiate that?
That's something that's going to be reviewed and approved by the Board of Commissioners and then prepared by my office.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to build on your comment. I mean, I'm familiar with Wawas with gas stations. We sometimes call them super Wawas. I don't know of a super Wawa in this kind of a context. I mean, it's a historic district. So I am looking out for the neighbors here, the residents of Wayne, downtown Wayne, who are going to be impacted by light, noise, air quality, traffic. We need to see some kind of plan to mitigate all of that.
Well, specifically on lighting, I did bring with me, we did a study back when we were going through preliminary land development of the existing lighting. And the existing lighting is much brighter. It's flooding into their properties a lot more than that's what's proposed today. So those details have been provided to the township. They were provided during preliminary land development. And the lighting plan shows what that is today, what's proposed today, being less. It's even less than that which was proposed, with the exception of that corner that needs to be cleaned up on the preliminary plan.
So as far as spillover, in addition to the corner of, we'll just call it the southwest corner on the
Yep.
map, is there an issue or to the east?
To the east, the Verizon store.
Yeah, is there spillover on that side as well?
There is. There's a few spots that are up to a half a foot candle along that property line, and we're going to work to get those down as well.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may ask, so our ordinance does state also that the actual luminaire is not supposed to be seen, from the abutting properties. So from what's under the canopy and what's on those poles, is that the case? Can you show us that that is the case?
They are full cutoff fixtures. I mean, I think that's really the intent of the ordinance, is that they're full cutoff fixtures. Everything in here is full cutoff fixtures.
Including what's under the canopy?
Yes, yeah, they're not, there's no bulb sticking down.
Okay, I have another question on the fence, because I don't believe it was clearly depicted on the plan that the fence, there was an existing fence, there was a proposed fence, so you're saying you're proposing a 6-foot white vinyl fence to run the entire property line, correct?
Yes.
So, to Mr. Nat's point, I mean, the suggestion is white vinyl fence, I mean, is shadow box an option for the residents that are going to be, I know the whole buffer is going to be in front of it, correct? But white vinyl fence, would you consider shadow box? Or could the owner consider shadow box?
Board on board. Yeah.
Okay, and can you literally show us on the plan where that entire run of 6-foot fence will go?
Sure. So it's actually right along, just before this row of trees. So we're putting it between the Wawa and the row of trees. So you have shrubs along the property line, then a row of trees, and then a fence.
So I'm sorry, for
Back
the
as well.
audience, maybe could you clearly depict the property line, the shrubs,
Sure,
the
so-
green giant arborvitae and the fence, just to give everybody an idea of what this is going to look like?
So this dark line right here is the property line, and then behind that is the row of shrubs, arborvitae, pine trees throughout this area. All these trees depicting that, and then the fence behind that, right along here.
What is the desired height of the arborvitae's at the end of the day?
The installed height, I want to say,
Both the installed height as well as, those things, they could keep growing, so what is,
I think your plans say 8 feet is the installed height. Could be.
so 8 to 10 feet for the service berries, and 8 feet in height for the arborvitae.
From a personal experience standpoint, I'd like to comment again about the fence, but also the arborvitae. I live in a community where we just got approval to do major landscape renovations. You can get 10 and 12-foot arborvitae if that's what the neighbors want and that's what you're willing to do.
I
And
know
again,
that you can get them, the problem, once they get to above a certain height, like above 8 feet, they have a tendency to not survive as well. They do grow pretty quick. They grow to 40 feet, 50 feet in height over time.
Well, if they have irrigation, that would solve some of the problems too,
So the type of arborvitae we're proposing doesn't need
Green
irrigation. We're trying to
well,
make it
For the
kind of
first 2
environmentally
years,
friendly at the same time.
I'm living with this exact project. For the first 2 years, the people that install the trees recommend irrigation.
So they have, there is recommended irrigation right after planting for the first few months. They will need to be maintained. There's a requirement that they are under a warranty for at least 18 months to start with. I think that's even a township requirement that'll be written into your land development agreement.
And back to the fence, even if you stay with vinyl, we made a choice to have a fence like you're proposing on Conestoga is where our property is. It does nothing to mitigate traffic noise. And we had hoped that maybe it would, but our experience is that either a solid fence or a mortar wall would work better than a hollow core vinyl fence.
I have another question. Mr. Cornelia, if you can come up again. So for those of us who were not on this board, me being one of them, I don't want to characterize this as anything but contentious. It's been a contentious process and a long road. Since you obtained the ruling from the courts to allow you to proceed, have you met with the neighbors?
I believe this evening, Pete has met with several of the neighbors, and they're here this evening, I know, as well.
Okay.
The neighbors that back immediately up to the property, or at least two of the neighbors that back immediately up to the property.
Can you tell me if there's going to be what do you envision as the process of working with the neighbors to take in their suggestions on this project?
I know that Pete met with them tonight. I have not heard the discussions on what was discussed or what was agreed to, if anything. Certainly that they will continue meeting with them, and certainly Wawa will meet with them in the future. I mean, Wawa doesn't want to, I know that Wawa and Wayne, when it first opened, had comments from the neighbors, and they resolved them.
Sure. I think, you know, in some ways, the court process has resolved a lot of issues. In other words, we're locked into a certain plan, but there are some variables. And, you know, as I sit here on the board, we have varying degrees of experience with vinyl fencing. We have different opinions on perhaps the landscape plan and different experiences with arborvitae and some suggestions on height. But I would say that perhaps the neighbors have a lot more to say about Wawa and the type of materials and the type of landscaping that you use. So certainly I would like to pitch to you that perhaps more meetings with the neighbors would be appropriate.
We're going to still meet with the neighbors. We're not going to shut them out on this process. Remember, this board and the applicant is bound by what the land development ordinance provides in this case. And we're going to be in compliance with the land development ordinance. Certainly, we will talk to the neighbors as well. Excuse me? Thank you.
I believe you said that you're complying with the order,
But we're willing to work with the board and the neighbors as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just make one last comment? I'm still caught up with the fence and the trees, and this goes back to my years of doing real estate development up in New York City. What is the difference in height between the current buildings, the two buildings, versus the proposed Wawa? Because my thought, my questions, or or following the logic, is that if you have a 6-foot fence and some arbors are going to be maybe like 8 feet or maybe 9 feet, that may work right now. But if the Wawa right now is 20 feet high, which I don't know what the height maximum height is over whatever, the folks that live behind that property, they're still going to be staring into what could be, 5 feet above the fence line.
So the floor elevation, I mean, it's a pretty flat site, so the floor elevation is roughly the same as what there is today. It is a single-story building. The code allows up to 35 feet. I know we're much less than that. I don't recall exactly what that height is. I want to say it's around 20 feet. in height, the building.
What about the canopy height? The canopy height over the pumps?
So it as well is close to, I think it's 17 feet.
I thought on your plan it was an A-frame.
It's an A-frame, so
It's
I
only
think it's
17
17 feet at one point,
Well,
close
you're
to
still gonna
20.
have a minimum of 17 feet because
Right.
the lampposts are 17 and a half feet.
Yes.
So where I'm getting at is in order to work with like the neighbors
Hmm?
in the back, I would think if I was living there, I would want to be, basically, I just would not, even though I love Wawa, I still wouldn't want to have to look at it. Have the complete privacy of my backyard. And so if I could avoid looking at the vaulted ceiling of the architecture or perhaps the tops of lighting poles, if there's a way to kind of solve that issue.
I think the biggest thing is that row arborvitae, as it grows, will continue to block that. I mean, that's gonna be your best buffer from a visual standpoint. Like I said, they can grow to 40, 50, 60 feet tall.
Right.
And they grow fairly quickly. The matter is you want to get them in and get them surviving. You just can't bring in a 40-foot tree and expect it to survive.
Yep, okay. Thank you, sorry for the
I was not advocating for a 40-foot tree. 12-foot, maybe, but not 40.
So you had mentioned that there was an issue regarding contamination and remediation. Can you just go through that, explain what exists and what you're doing?
So I know that I'm not the environmental engineer, so I can just speak a little bit on it, that I know that there are existing issues that have been ongoing with the DEP on that property for quite a few years. They have ongoing water testing out there and continue. I think a lot of it has been to some extent cleaned up, and what hasn't will be cleaned up as part of this proposal. When they go to open the ground, they're going to have to, test the water, test the soils, and mitigate everything that they find in there in accordance and in cooperation with the DEP.
In that regard, my understanding is you could still find a can of worms under there that you don't quite know about yet with the testing because you have to remove some pumps, right? That's all still to come. That's beyond the purview of this, but that's still in play, right?
There's always a chance, but there are a slew of wells out there, a lot of which are still active, testing wells. They've closed some wells, and they've scattered this site with dozens of wells through the years. So I don't think that they're going to find a whole lot that they aren't really prepared for. But yeah, there's always a possibility, and they'll have to address that.
Can you say what they found so far?
I don't know the detail of that.
Over here. You don't know?
I don't.
And so you don't know what they're remediating?
I know that there's some groundwater issues and some, it's really from the old tanks, the old gas tanks that were in there. So some, chemicals related to gasoline that are in there that need to be cleaned up. That's the extent of really, what I know. We have a lot of detail in the plan that talks about during demolition, how to work with the environmental engineer and with the DEP to make sure everything is cleaned up. These plans have just been submitted last month they were submitted to the Conservation District for NPDES review, and they're going to be combing through that as well with a fine-tooth comb.
On the plan, you have a soil stockpile right on the front, on the Lancaster Avenue side, which is temporary due to excavation going on. You have any safeguards if that contains contaminated soil?
That is specific to, construction materials, not necessarily contaminated soils. Contaminated soils will have to be addressed in accordance with the DEP. And again, that's really a separate issue than land development. It's something that the environmental engineer will have to address during demolition.
if I misread it, that stockpile could be construction materials, not excavated soil.
Not excavated, contaminated soils.
Solicitor, your mic's on.
I have a few comments, if I could just kind of run down the list here. On the landscaping plan, just for clarification, the color difference here with the kind of beige ribbon around the building and then the asphalt, is that just a sort of flush concrete
Yes.
portion and then a curb around the building?
Yeah, that's all concrete around the building. That's really put in place from a maintenance standpoint to minimize the need for maintenance. The concrete obviously is a little stronger. It also gives you a better product for the ADA stalls. Helps ensure that you meet the ADA requirements.
Okay. And then along Lancaster Avenue, the current curb condition, aside from sort of more cutouts than you have here, the curb is sunken into the street, and it's sort of a straight, run of asphalt, sunken curb, concrete sidewalk into the kind of core of the property. Can you just talk maybe about that area along Lancaster Avenue specifically? Is that narrow green buffer indicating kind of a new curb and a grass kind of buffer between the street and the sidewalk, or is there still, I'm just trying to confirm that it's not that kind of sidewalk and strip are inset and there's still going to be the sunken curb? And
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. What's a little bit of a mess out there today. What's proposed, all new curb, 8-inch curb along the frontage. That'll 8-inch curb along Lancaster will be required by PennDOT. And then a grass strip, grass verge, if you will, and then a sidewalk. So it cleans it up pretty well.
And the width of that sidewalk is sort of consistent maybe with what's on the St. Catherine's side of the intersection?
Yes, I believe that's correct. I think we're looking at 5-foot sidewalk around.
Okay. And then the kind of proposed pedestrian entrances to the site, it looks like kind of on the southwest corner, there's that sidewalk that comes in along the parallel parking that you were talking about earlier. And then kind of at the center of the Lancaster Avenue frontage, there's another pedestrian entrance. Are those really the two kind of dedicated pedestrian entrances aside from the two, drive aisles on each frontage?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Then the plans you had also mentioned sort of a loading zone between the Lancaster Avenue kind of buffer area and the building. Not on the screen now, but in the sort of plans that were on the file right there. Can you just describe kind of the expected loading pattern to access and utilize that loading zone?
Sure. I believe I actually have a plan that shows it. Yeah, what we're showing basically that the truck would come in, circulate around, pull into here, and then back its way out, back onto Lancaster.
For the board's benefit, it's sheet C302, which has all the turning templates in your packet.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, is this Wawa to replace the Wawa in Wayne?
Yes, ultimately. No? No, my apologies. No. Okay.
Thank you. What's the square footage of that Wawa?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Can you clarify when you said that the truck's going to back up? I think we should probably go on to the circulation plan, right?
Yeah, here's the circulation plan.
Okay, great.
So we really haven't. Now, keep in mind that this plan, we were requested by the traffic engineer to show every possible movement, not necessarily what will happen. Wawa can control how vehicles enter and exit the site. So there are some movements that are shown on here that we don't expect will happen. But with regard to the delivery truck, we actually show if a larger vehicle basically being able to come in. This is the WB50, so it could come into the site, circulate around, pull into the loading area, and then he could back, I said back around, but he would circulate back around to get out of the site.
Okay, so he's not backing up.
No, he's not backing up.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And is the intent then that those trucks would all come in and out on Lancaster Avenue?
That's the intent. We are proposing that the plan has been updated from that of the approved preliminary plan to show no truck egress out onto Aberdeen.
What about with the gasoline supply?
I'm sorry, what about
The
it?
gasoline supply, what's the route for those trucks?
So that's also shown here. Basically, you come in off of Lancaster in either way, either direction, come around, drop off the fuel here in this location where the tanks are compressed, and then circulate back
Okay.
around.
Thank you.
Is this going to sell just gas, or is it going to sell diesel?
I believe they do sell diesel as well. But it's a low volume diesel. It's not like the high volume diesels. Wawa does offer high volume diesels, like at a rest stop off the turnpike or something like that. They don't have that here. It's that would take hours to fill up on these. This is really for small personal vehicles, small personal trucks, small trucks.
If I understand that turning radius correctly, so you are allowing the gas tankers to turn left from Lancaster Avenue into the Wawa, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So are patrons also allowed to turn left?
To and from Lancaster Avenue, yes. Yeah.
Why wouldn't they just go to the light and turn?
They could do that too. I mean, I think at that point, and this is all going to be subject again to the PennDOT review and approval as well. But again, we're taking 4 driveways that are all full access and making it one.
I understand that what's there today is, this is an improvement to what's there today. I understand that argument. But what you are proposing here is a supercharged site with a lot of activity and a potential for conflicts and collisions.
So that's all addressed in the traffic study, which is under review.
All right.
Just
So
a question, and I think someone asked earlier about sort of renderings and procedurally kind of where that would fit in. But from a design perspective, not having the history of kind of the prior proceedings, can you just maybe comment on materials that are contemplated or adjustments that are made or considered kind of for the context of this property itself? I recognize Wawa has sort of a prototypical building, but on the website for Wawa, the dimensions and sort of size of that prototypical building are all, I think, in excess of what's available here. It looks for a 2-acre site. It looks for 12 pumps or something like that, and a building over 5,000 square feet or 4,000 to 6,000 square feet. So can we just talk about sort of modifications in design materials or architecture that were included here to be considerate of the context? And the property that kind of comes to mind for me is the CVS on Lancaster Avenue and Old Eagle Road, where there's kind of the stone facade and a different roof structure and something much more kind of consistent with the character of the kind of the neighborhood. Just maybe if you could speak to that.
So Wawa typically has either brick or stone along the bottom with like a stucco above. In this particular case, the last renderings we had showed stone in the bottom with brick up top, no stucco, or very little stucco. Normally they would have a sloped roof for the canopy, went with an A-frame roof, as well as somewhat of a false facade, if you will, frontage along Lancaster. Fake windows, things like that. Windows that look like windows.
Right, okay, thanks.
So you spoke of the reduction in pumps from what's there between the two gas stations and what you're proposing. Do you have any EV charging proposed in this plan?
Not at the moment, no.
Is there any proposed indoor dining here, or is this just grab and go?
I'm not sure. I don't know the interior of it, if they're doing that or not. I think that's still up in the air.
Back in 2018, there was talk about hours of operation. Are you aware of what the contemplated hours of operation are?
24/7.
24/7.
Are there considerations in the plan for dedicated sort of pickup and delivery traffic or parking to accommodate sort of DoorDash, Uber Eats, all of the different delivery services that exist today?
So that's part of their standard operation to accommodate for that. That's why they have the number of parking spaces that they have.
Okay, thanks. I mean, the preference is 50 to 60 car parking. I think right now you're accommodating 47.
47.
So, okay, thank you. And then when the Wawa specs indicate sort of 8 multi-product fuel dispensers, that's what you're counting as 6, right? 6 kind of pump pedestals that serve.
Yeah, there's
2
6
each.
MPDs, so 12 positions.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
So just two questions. One was, you were talking about the traffic. Is there traffic study still going on? What is the procedure in the timeline?
We have Matt here to address that. Matt Hammond from Traffic Planning and Design.
Okay.
We'll address that if we're ready for it.
One other question before we go to that. As far as the design goes, can you just tell me what the procedure and the timeline for that is?
Yeah, as the design itself, remember, it goes to Design Review Board. So that would be normally done after final land development is received. I'm not certain. We talked about perhaps applying for it during the process, but normally it's done after the final land development process is achieved, just in case there's any changes to the plan.
Okay. All right. So okay, could we hear from the other gentleman then?
Good evening. Matt Hammond with Traffic Planning and Design. As was mentioned, a traffic study has been completed for the site. And in fact, there have been a number of versions of that traffic study completed over time. But the most recent version of the study is dated December 5th of 2024. That was submitted to the township as part of the land development plans and was also reviewed by the township traffic engineer. But essentially, though, what the study looks at are a number of intersections, obviously along Lancaster Avenue, and then as you get further down into the neighborhood area, Midland and Luella, and then again along Lancaster Avenue. Knowing that there's a school in close proximity to the subject site as well as a church, we expanded the time frame that we typically look at from an analysis perspective. If those of you are familiar with reading traffic studies, as riveting as they are, you'll know that typically we look at the AM and PM peak hours. But because of the school and because of the church and because of the activity in this area, we looked at 5 time periods, that being the morning, the AM peak hour, the midday lunch peak hour, the PM peak hour, Saturday peak hour, and the school peak hour, I apologize, and then the Sunday peak hour. So we looked at a number of various time periods when we were modeling the traffic to determine how everything would operate, and then also determine what mitigation or improvements that could be provided here to offset some of the impact the development may or may not have. As has been discussed, obviously there's 2 existing gas stations, one with a repair center, multiple fueling positions, a car wash, and 6 access points serving those 2 properties, 2 on Aberdeen and 4 on Lancaster Avenue. We are consolidating the 4 on Lancaster Avenue to 1 full access driveway as far away from the intersection as we can push it. That access being here, and that access again is full movement. That means right in, right out, left in, left out. And then an access point on Aberdeen, again, push further as far away from the intersection with Lancaster as possible, also allowing full movement, right in, right out, left in, left out. The traffic study, previous versions of the traffic study were prepared in conjunction with coordinating with not only the township traffic engineer as well as PennDOT. So the study area, those time periods, and the parameters of the study were coordinated. PennDOT has reviewed the traffic study in the past. I will note that the current version of the study is still being reviewed by PennDOT. We're hopeful to have a review back sometime early next week. But as you may or may not be aware, because we are on Lancaster Avenue and because we are affecting a signalized intersection, we will need to seek PennDOT approval vis-a-vis a highway occupancy permit. So not only do we need to obtain approval from the township, but we also need to obtain approval from PennDOT in order to provide for the access point proposed on Lancaster Avenue, as well as the modifications that are being proposed at the intersection of Aberdeen and Lancaster Avenue. What you'll notice, and this was something that was requested originally by the department, was you'll notice in the gray shaded area along Aberdeen Avenue, we are proposing to widen along the frontage to provide for a separate right turn lane to help progress traffic through the intersection. That is being done along the property frontage and will not extend beyond property frontage. Again, mentioned one improvement, and I think was also agreed that was an improvement, was the consolidation of the access points. The pedestrian facilities providing the connections internal to the site, as well as the perimeter of the site, are also an important improvement, not only from more so from a pedestrian traffic perspective, but there are also some improvements being made to the operation of the signal at Aberdeen and Lancaster Avenue, as well as the corridor itself. The township has desired to install what's called a traffic adaptive system along Lancaster Avenue, I believe from the Radnor Township line west all the way to St. David's Road. So all of those signalized intersections within that corridor will be linked and would operate as one. So what that means, if you're not familiar with it, what that means is instead of having the traditional timing that you see at a traffic signal, that they all work together and they're linked to a computer. So as traffic volumes change along the corridor, the computer is reading that and going through its algorithms and determining what the best timing sequence is for those signals to help progress traffic along the corridor. So it's adaptive. It's adaptive to the traffic volumes at the time. Being that the township is desiring to install a traffic adaptive system along the corridor, the applicant has agreed to provide for the traffic adaptive equipment at the intersection of Aberdeen and Lancaster Avenue. In addition, due to the widening, we would need to relocate a traffic signal mast arm and upgrade the pedestrian facilities at that intersection. That would include all the latest bells and whistles from pedestrian perspective, push buttons, striping, ADA ramps, and the like. That would also be a requirement of PennDOT. And then we're also looking to adjust timings along the corridor to help traffic better progress through this area. Again, extending much further outside of the area of the proposed Wawa. There are some other items that were requested recently by the township traffic engineer. One was to look at limiting parking along Aberdeen Avenue along the property frontage, which we've agreed to work with the township on limiting parking along that area. As Mr. Britz had mentioned, we are proposing to restrict all tractor-trailer traffic from exiting out onto Aberdeen Avenue. And in fact, There was a question in one of the review letters about traffic or truck traffic entering the Wawa via right turn on Aberdeen Avenue. That is something that we're also proposing to restrict as well. I don't know that there would be necessarily the need for a truck to travel through the neighborhood, but if there is, and if that is a concern, we've agreed to restrict truck traffic through that area. I would also mention that the two main deliveries to a Wawa, the tractor trailers, are the fuel and the store deliveries. Store deliveries occur about once a week or so. Fuel deliveries are as needed, may occur once a day. But Wawa does have the ability to route those delivery vehicles. They do control those delivery vehicles in terms of how they enter and how they exit the facility. So that's something that Wawa can also, as a belt and suspenders approach, in addition to the prohibitions, can provide for those delivery trucks. I mentioned the timing. I may be missing a couple minor other items, but those are the majority of the improvements that are being proposed and have been discussed and provided to date. Yeah.
Are you able to walk us through sort of the pedestrian flow from the surrounding neighborhoods or along Lancaster Avenue? Obviously, there's a lot being contemplated as far as a redevelopment conversations. I would imagine that as downtown Wayne becomes more residential, you'll have folks walking.
Sure. Yes. So the good thing about this site is it already has the bones, so to speak, from a pedestrian standpoint. There are sidewalks along Lancaster Avenue on both sides, on the north and south side. There's sidewalks on Aberdeen, on the east and west sides. There's a pretty extensive pedestrian network that already exists there today. So what we're looking to do is enhance that. And what I mean by enhance it is obviously provide for sidewalk connecting into the existing sidewalk on Aberdeen Avenue along the site frontage, connecting it up, bringing it up along to the intersection with Aberdeen and Lancaster, and then continuing a new 5-foot sidewalk along the entire frontage. At the driveway openings, there would be ADA compliant pedestrian ramps provided for. Those would be the ramps at the Aberdeen driveway would be reviewed by the Township engineer. The ramps at the Lancaster Avenue driveway were reviewed by PennDOT, but they would all be ADA compliant. We're also proposing to improve the pedestrian crossings at the intersection of Aberdeen and Lancaster. At a minimum right now, you would have new ADA ramps at the intersection of, at least at our corner at the intersection. You would have 2 separate ramps, which is the current standard. Rather than having one ramp that serves 2 movements at the intersection, you now have 2 separate ramps. There would be pedestrian accommodations from the traffic signal perspective, as I mentioned. But we've also kind of gone a little bit further than you typically see on a Wawa, whereas there's a pedestrian connection made that comes directly in to the Wawa store from Lancaster Avenue. There's also a connection, as was discussed before, coming in from Aberdeen Avenue, which provides you a defined pedestrian path, bringing you in along the parallel parking spaces and then across to the Wawa. Now, one thing that's a little bit different about that crossing is the fact that we wanted to try to approach it and look at what we could do to enhance that pedestrian crossing, because it is closer to the residential area. And as I mentioned, it's not typical to see a connection that comes directly in from the sidewalk network. But what we proposed here is not only the connection, but a raised crosswalk in that area. It's more of a traffic calming type situation so that it's visible to motorists that are traversing interior to the Wawa. And along with that comes along, obviously, the striping and signage. Now, One of the things that was shown on the land development plan that I was not necessarily involved in, which also is a comment in the review letter, in the Gilmore review letter, was that currently the plan shows for a flashing pedestrian warning sign at that crossing. I personally, as a traffic engineer, am not in favor of a flashing pedestrian warning sign within interior to a parking lot. Any flashing warning device in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania requires that PennDOT approve that warning device because it's technically classified as a traffic control device. But the plan does show a flashing warning sign there. And again, I'm not in favor of it for various reasons. Some of those include the fact that there's typically when you have a pedestrian crossing sign, the latest technology is such that it's pedestrian actuated. So that means when someone approaches that crossing, that it automatically starts to flash. So you don't have to worry about pressing the button. And because of the parking that's going on and the vehicles that are traveling in there, I'm afraid that that light will be activated many more times than is needed, number one. Number two, I think that based on the time that you would need to allocate to that flashing warning device, that there's a potential for traffic to back up internally in the Wawa and maybe out to Aberdeen. And the fact that it's just not a driver's expectation to be internal to a parking lot, whether it's a shopping center, whether it's a Wawa, and see a flashing sign going on that's essentially stopping traffic. But in the same respect, we want to enhance that pedestrian crossing and then make it safe for the pedestrians. So rather than the flashing warning device, which again, I have concerns over and I think would actually, and I don't want to speak for the residents, but the residents may have concerns over a flashing warning light going on right in that area. I had suggested that we work with the township traffic engineer to maybe enhance some signage through that area, some additional striping. The other thing that we've talked about too is that, as was mentioned earlier, this light yellow area is all flush concrete. Wawa does this for various reasons, mostly liability, and also so that if you've seen older Wawas that may have curbing along the frontage, they tend to collect trash. But what we could also do here, and again, this would be in coordination with the township engineer, traffic engineer, is to define this area more so that provide some curbing around here and maybe a little bit of landscaping, and then bring that a defined pedestrian crossing all the way up to that sidewalk that exists around the building. So have a defined pedestrian connection here, and then have it defined by curbing through that area.
Let me just ask real quick.
Yeah.
At your Baltimore Pike media location, is there some type of like bricking or red type of material that
Like stamped asphalt?
maybe I
Yeah,
can't
there's-
tell from pictures?
Sure.
Was something like that used at the Baltimore Pike location?
I'm sure there was something like that used at that location. That location is a very unique location. It was modeled to look like a trolley stop. There's materials, like I said, stamped asphalt can be utilized. I'm proposing, at this point, we propose some striping as well as some fluorescent signs through that area and have that defined area. But I think one of the biggest improvements to that pedestrian crossing is the fact that it's a raised crossing. Just imagine taking a speed hump and pulling it apart and having a flat area through there. So that's, to me, that's a big safety enhancement from what you see from a typical crosswalk. We would be open to providing stamped asphalt through that area to help better define.
The concern I have is on Aberdeen, because you have kids coming from the middle school as well as St. Catherine's, where they're walking down the street and they're either going to go to your Wawa, and as well as they're going to go to Five Below, and as well as they're going to Chick-fil-A.
Sure.
And so when you have people that are coming out onto Aberdeen from the Wawa, what type of, and I don't know if there's an answer here, but what type of enhanced security to make sure, secure is not the right word, but protection for the kids that are going to be walking along Aberdeen, that they're going to get clipped by a car?
And before you answer,
Okay.
what are you doing in the same realm? What are you doing to minimize mid-block crossings?
You mean
On Aberdeen.
On Aberdeen.
Because this is, I mean, it's very clear that, and I appreciate the work that's been done to create this pathway to allow neighborhood access by foot, but at the same time, it seems like it's almost inviting mid-block crossings.
Third graders always observe signs.
So again, what we're trying to do, obviously, is extend that sidewalk up and provide for that direct path within. To answer the first question in terms of what are we doing to prevent any pedestrian, for that matter, crossing that driver from getting clipped, I don't know that there's anything physically we can do, but for the fact that you have the crosswalk there, you have the signage, you have the striping, you have a stop sign, and you have sight distance in both directions to see. It's not unlike any other driveway that you would have for any other use, whether it's office, whether it's Chick-fil-A, whether it's a retail center. It is what it is. There's really nothing physically we can do to stop people from potentially getting hit crossing a driveway. But again, we are enhancing that pedestrian crossing. We are reducing the number of crossings that those children or those pedestrians take today, 2 crossings today, to get to that intersection, to cross through that intersection. We're improving the pedestrian circulation, and we're enhancing the equipment out there to help promote that pedestrian activity. From a mid-block crossing perspective, there's a very robust network of sidewalks through that area. I don't know that there's anything that we can do to prevent someone from crossing anywhere that they so choose to cross, where they feel the shortest distance between point A and point B. But what we're tasked with doing is providing for a safe pedestrian network. Again, we can't physically stop people from crossing wherever they so choose to cross. But we are providing for very reasonable options for people to get to and from that store. If a resident was coming up Aberdeen Avenue and wanted to go to the Wawa and then wanted to go to Five Below, they could do so by coming in this crosswalk or this sidewalk, going across this raised crosswalk in here, access the Wawa, come back out, cross over here, and get back onto the sidewalk network without walking along Aberdeen Avenue or walking along Lancaster Avenue. So, it's difficult for us to prevent people from doing what they choose, but it's easy for us to provide for a defined pedestrian network.
I want you to know that I fully appreciate the challenge here. And just in summary, the challenge is, how do you keep children safe? What I'm concerned about is and it is a catch-22, admittedly, is that if you take this this sidewalk, raised sidewalk entrance out, they're going to be using the driveway. And if you allow it to remain, obviously, that gives folks the choice to use the safer path. I'm concerned about is that you've just made that entrance more inviting, and I think your younger customers will do what they do anyway, and perhaps it'll draw more traffic in. So it's not a question, it's a statement. I'm sure we'll hear from the residents.
Appreciate it.
How about if we transition to that now? Okay. So before we have public comment, I would ask the solicitor just to chime in again and explain the court orders that have come down and how they apply to our proceeding here and how this is moving forward?
So, I think most of the residents recognize the township did originally deny the preliminary plan. That denial was then appealed by the developer. Ultimately, the Commonwealth Court granted that appeal, overturned the township's denial of this preliminary plan, and found that the reasons for denying the plan were incorrect, ergo that the plan was in conformance with our ordinances. The matter was remanded to the local court here in Media, who then issued an order. Under that order, the developer has preliminary plan approval, and under state law, once a developer has preliminary plan approval, they have the right to final plan approval based on that preliminarily approved plan. So this is a situation, as at the beginning of this hearing, Developers Council stated that, kind of tweaking around the edges, they're cleaning up some minor matters. This is not a situation where the developer is obligated to make any substantial changes to the plan because the court has declared the plan in compliance. Is that what you're looking for?
Exactly.
Thank you.
And that is, at this point, no longer appealable.
Correct.
Run its course.
It was appealed to the state Supreme Court, and they denied to hear that appeal. So there is no existing court case. The court case is over, is done. The courts have reached their decision, and we have to work with it.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Solicitor, one further question. There was an attempt to appeal. There's no more appeal.
Correct. Yeah,
there's no higher body that we can go, that residents can go to, or the township can go to further this case along in the courts.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, I would invite members of the public to come to the podium. If you do, please state your name and your address. And limit your comments, please, to no more than 5 minutes.
Evening. Chris Gagliardi, 207 Midland Avenue, 24 years there. I've watched the neighborhood change over the years. I also watched the children come and go from the schools. There are 2 schools that are in question here. One is at St. Catherine's, it's a K-8 school. And of course, the Radnor middle school as well. My biggest concern, I think a lot of the neighbors' biggest concern has been over time, is the pedestrian effect and potential injury from this super Wawa. There's been a lot of discussion about the exits and the fact that we've gone from 6 exits to 2. That creates choke points. This is going to be not only a gas station, but a place where people are going to go for lunch, dinner, and they have your food service organizations picking up, whether it be DoorDash or Uber Eats or whomever, trucks coming and going. And there's one big change on this plan that I don't agree with as well, which is the right-hand turning lane from Luella onto Lancaster Avenue. I think most people who are going to go eastbound on Lancaster Avenue are going to go out the right side exit, Lancaster. The ones coming off of Luella, Aberdeen, are going to be going left to go down to the neighborhoods to go westbound versus going up to the light and waiting in line. So I don't understand why there's a right-hand turning lane there. I think that was asked for by the church at one time, but it should really be a forced left-hand turning lane, not a right-hand turning lane. So I would suggest that we reconsider the path of making a right-hand turning lane there, make it a left-hand turning lane to allow traffic to exit from the property to go westbound on Lancaster Avenue, among other changes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chip Addis. I live at 511 Askin Road, which is just a couple of blocks back from this location. So if I go back 5 years when this whole thing started and right before all the lawsuits ensued, there was another plan that was presented by Nick and the Wawa team to actually put the Wawa back into the corner of this property and situate the pumps out on Lancaster Avenue, which seemed like it had a lot of support from the community, because now what happens is now you have gas pumps facing St. Catharines as opposed to facing Lancaster Avenue, and your view from Lancaster Avenue is to a loading zone. I mean, talk about terrible design. So I'm just asking the question, what happened to that plan, Nick? What happened to the plan of putting the building, turning the Wawa this way, and putting these pumps out onto Lancaster Avenue?
Do you want me to address it, or do you want to wait? Chip, that plan was presented, and it was rejected.
And therefore, the lawsuits ensued.
That's correct.
So is there any possible way that that plan can now come back
No, we can't.
as a possibility?
No, not 6 years later. No.
Right, so, okay.
Mr. Cornelia, who was that plan rejected by?
It was put before both the neighbors and the township, and they did not, it wasn't formally submitted, but we gave them options, and they said no.
Didn't they reject every single plan?
Yes, they rejected every single plan. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Just follow along with me here. If you were to bring that plan back to life, I'm not suggesting that you do, would you have to relitigate it in the courts?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess that ends that, right, in terms of doing Wawa being a good steward here and providing a plan that really could work for the community. I guess that option is now out. So now we have to look, now we're left with looking at the side of the Wawa to a loading zone, that there's going to be tractor trailers on Lancaster Avenue that we're all driving by there every day looking at. I mean, this to me is an absolutely horrible plan. I can't even believe that Wawa would allow something like this to happen in a community like Wayne, or any community of any sort, frankly. Because I'm imagining that end wall on the Wawa is a blank wall. That's what we're all going to be looking at driving down Lancaster Avenue, is a blank wall facing Lancaster Avenue with tractor trailers.
I do think it was indicated earlier that it's a false facade with fake windows. I don't know if the team...
Are there windows on that side facing Lancaster Avenue? Where are what is it, that center? I don't know what it looks like, but any other Wawa I've seen doesn't have windows on the side.
That's not the side, that's the front.
Well, the front door is here, right?
Right, but it's front facing Lancaster. We're well away.
Is there a door entry over here, Nick?
No.
No, that's just a blank wall.
It's not. Design review will consider the plan.
Okay. I don't know if you all drive in this neighborhood, the traffic specialist here. How in the world are you going to pull out of Lancaster Avenue, pull out of the Wawa and make a left-hand turn on Lancaster Avenue?
You can't do it now.
You can't do it right. How are you going to do it with the amount of people and cars that are going to be in this site compared to what's there now? How are you going to go left? So what's going to happen? Now you're going to get everybody going out onto Aberdeen, right? I didn't hear anything about a left turn lane or arrow to send people west on Lancaster Avenue. So how are you going to make a left there? The traffic's going to back up if there's no left arrow, right? And it's then the people exiting Wawa are going to be left with no choice but to turn back into the neighborhoods. That's exactly what's going to happen. So I don't know what your traffic studies have entailed, but that's exactly what's going to happen. You know, all these people out here, I don't live, you know, the Otts live right there on Midland Road, and Chris Gagliardi on Midland Avenue. I don't live on Midland Avenue, but they're going to be inundated with cars coming out onto Aberdeen, going left, and infiltrating back into the neighborhoods. That's exactly what's going to happen. The pedestrian, is there a pedestrian access on the corner of Lancaster and Aberdeen to get from that corner into the Wawa site?
No.
No, I don't see a sidewalk that takes you from the corner of Lancaster and Aberdeen and puts you into the Wawa site. If there were, you come into gas pumps. Like, how can you not have an entry from the corner into the site? I don't, for the life of me, understand that. Therefore, going back to the original, the plan that everybody seemed to like, moving the Wawa here, the pumps out here, kind of solved a lot of those problems. But I'm not sure why that plan can't come back now. I'm not sure. Seems like a no-brainer to me. This is going to be an A-frame on top of the gas pumps, is what I'm understanding. So it's going to be open on this end towards the residential area, right? Can that A-frame be enclosed, basically, so the light doesn't spill out into the neighborhood? I don't know. There was seemingly no discussion about that. In terms of materials, I know what a typical Wawa materials are. I know you say it's going to be brick with stone or something on the bottom, but that layered kind of stone that you see on the Wawas are really not very attractive. So can it be like St. Catherine's, can it be a material that blends in with the beautiful stone on St. Catherine's? Like a Wissahickon schist type of look, as opposed to these flat layered stones that they have on the buildings? I don't know. I just present that as an observation to make this Wawa sort of blend in with the community as opposed to just detract from the community. I didn't hear anybody say anything about a wooden fence. Okay, maybe I missed that, Skip. But how about a wooden fence back here as opposed to a white vinyl fence? Really?
Oh, my comment was, how about a masonry wall?
Masonry wall's fine, but how about just a wooden fence, a wooden stockade fence? Wouldn't that seem to blend in a little bit better than a white vinyl fence that every year is going to turn green with algae, and it won't be cleaned up? That's just the way it goes. So there's all these kinds of things. I'm just in utter disbelief that we're actually sitting here today presented with a plan like this for this community. I think this community deserves a lot better than a Wawa kind of sitting on its side as opposed to facing Lancaster Avenue and gas pumps facing St. Catherine's. I just don't understand why we can't get that plan back, Nick, and why Wawa can't do what's right for the town of Wayne.
Is there a representative from Wawa here? Oh, okay. Nice to meet you. Welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify a comment there from Commissioner Kunda, when we said you can't make the left turn today, is there actually a restriction on those exits from the existing site, or is that just due to the challenge?
I go to the vestige of the BP station, which was what we're talking about for my gas, and I look at the traffic. Once in a great while, 1 out of 5 or 6 times you can make the left.
Okay, just
But
making
most
sure.
of the
wasn't a
time, it's
restriction.
easier to take a right, and actually, unfortunately, I cut through the neighborhood to get home up by Conestoga Road. I don't go back on Lancaster.
Hello, can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Lindsay Stevens, Jeremy Stevens. We're at 301 Midland. We are the property immediately behind the Wawa. So we wanted to take a moment to introduce ourselves. In fact, we purchased this property in February of 2020. We moved here from out of state. It was never disclosed to us that there was going to be a Wawa built behind the property, so we did not purchase the property knowing that this was coming at us. So surprise. We definitely wanted to just introduce you a little bit to our property so you understand the implications of this to the property. First and foremost, the comments regarding safety of our children is our number one concern. We do know there has been some revisions to accommodate the children, but I think many of you, as stated before, understand that we see this all the time, that the corner of Aberdeen and Midland is a meetup spot every Friday afternoon. I don't think the traffic study took that into consideration, but all the children of SKS and the middle school meet up there, and they proceed to walk into Wayne via the Aberdeen and Lancaster Avenue. So we would fully expect that would probably double now that we're going to have a Wawa. So we just want to make sure that we're paying particular attention to the safety, understanding that there will be droves of children who don't quite fit on the sidewalk, making their way up to this property. So want to make sure we really reinforce that message as we're making decisions regarding traffic flows and safety, as well as the intersection. We all know that is going to be a hot spot for children and pedestrians crossing the road. So really want to make sure we keep that front of mind. For today, I think our concern we'd like to bring up to this board for review. First of all, we have never met with anyone from Wawa or the property until today. So I would like to say we've had a productive conversation with Pete, the owner. We do value and appreciate the open lines of communication. We really hope we can continue those open lines of communication. One of the areas that we did bring up for discussion was related to the lighting plan. So I wanted to make sure to reinforce, from what we see today, it may feel like there's no light going to be hitting our property, but keep in mind we have a 3-story home. We have significant amount of windows that will be facing the Wawa. We are set at least 5 feet below the Wawa. So if you think about that, our first floor is pretty much right level with the property. Our second and third floor will be above the property, well above the proposed 6-foot fence. So we do have a lot of concern around how that light will be contained. Love to get the engineer's perspective on what these lights will actually feel like when you're sitting inside a property right above or right at the same leaf and above with light directly in some way, shape, or form coming into our property. So it is a big issue today, but the gas station does turn its lights off well before we go to bed every night. So we've been able to mitigate it that way, but knowing it's 24/7, it's going to be a much different conversation. So we do have some major concerns about that, as well as the fence. As many of you have brought up, we do have significant concerns about a proposed vinyl fence. We are also in favor of doing something of more mortar-like. So thank you for bringing that up. That is our preference, and I speak for the Finleys who live next to us. We really want to see consideration from our neighbors in Wawa, thinking about the fact that we have to live 24/7 lights that will, regardless of whether or not they're LED or not, will be seen from every floor of our property. So those are our big concerns. We do have a lot of additional questions, as you may expect, but I would anticipate that our partners, Pete over here, we can continue to have some conversations around additional concerns. Anything I forgot? The other, I think, one piece of information to bring up, we have been going to a lot of Wawas recently just to kind of see what to expect living directly next to one. We've observed a few things, one of which is they play 24/7 commercials at their pumps. We would like to request that we do not have music or commercials. I don't think that was brought up today, but I wanted to make that really clear. That is very noisy and could present some sound issues. Anything?
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. I appreciate the time today to, walk through some of the discussion items with Peter. But like, as the plans are laid out, lighting, sound, major considerations. If there's an opportunity for a stronger structure or a higher wall, that'd be much appreciated to be taken into account. The landscaping obviously is going to take years and years and years to grow, but like Lindsay said, everything from our house will be directly visible onto the property, as it's a 3-story property with 18 to 20 windows facing the back line. And to give context, this line right here is where our windows are at. So it is, not far away from those structures.
But yeah, we don't anticipate a fence or anywhere remotely within the next 10 to 20 years that those plantings will be sufficient for that.
So purportedly 3 feet a year.
Yeah,
So
So no, that's pretty, I don't get there.
maybe once I retire, hopefully.
listening to your points, which actually with the music at the pumps. So we have a gentleman, thank you, from Wawa. I appreciate you coming here. It's I've sat in your position before. It's a tough couple hours. So I appreciate your being here. But who, at the end of the day, you have a developer who owns the sites. They're going to be I'm not sure if they're going to be selling it, or they're certainly going to be leasing the building to you. Who's making these decisions from an operational? Who's making the decision on the fence, the materials on the fence? Who's going to be making the decision on if the music is going to be played at the pump? Is that you, or is that the gentleman that's going to be selling or leasing the space to you or to Wawa?
It's a combination.
Okay.
So along those lines, could one of you speak to the issue of, is there going to be noise coming from the pumps?
No, so at our pumps, when we have our pumps, and yes, they do have information that they provide at those pumps. Some of them are information when people are using the pumps. Sometimes there is information that is being played when it's not. What we have determined and what we set our volumes at is so that the volume that is heard is not.
Could I have you come to the mic and? No problem.
Sure, we have a handheld for you. Thank you, Mr. Cornelia.
And if you would, just state your name and your position.
Thank you. My name is Mike Spiegel, so I'm a real estate project engineer for Wawa. I am a Wawa employee. I'm by choice being here tonight. I knew I wasn't going to be doing any presentations, but I know from our standpoint, and Wawa does take into consideration concerns from the neighborhood. We understand when we do come into a community, and we've been in this community in Radnor for decades. I think one of our earliest stores has been here since the 70s. So we understand what the area is all about. Obviously we're born and bred in Delaware County. We take into account all the concerns as much as we can. Obviously we're a business. We operate a business. We bring 30 to 40 jobs to the area. Most of our employees are local. So we bring opportunities to the area, to the community. We do understand a lot of the concerns that come through. It's noise, it's deliveries, it's lighting, trash, a variety of different things. So we try to take into account as much as we can. We've learned a lot from all the stores. We're approaching 1,100 stores in our chain, all owned by the Wawa Corporation. So we've been through a lot of these, issues before. We've taken a lot of stance from where we came from. So we've been, operating for 60 years, where we were then to the legacy stores to, as you call them, the super Wawas. We like to call them as fuel stores. We've learned what works, what doesn't work, what's changed. Going to, like, for example, all these LED lights, we didn't have those before. When we do remodels now, we change those to LED lights. So there's a lot of things that we try to do to help, mediate and limit where we can. Obviously, we're still operating as a business. We want to make sure, as a convenience store, that we are still convenient. We still want to make sure that we're safe. Some people have concerns with the lighting, for example, that it's, we want a darker lighting in a parking lot. Sometimes you worry about safety, not just for our customers, for our store associates, for our delivery partners. So there's a lot of other things to take into account when you have, for example, lighting. To your question in particular about, being a neighbor, yes, obviously Wawa wants to be a great neighbor. We want to do whatever we can to help to a certain degree. We We want to make sure that the residents, the community, the children, everybody is going to be in a safe environment. ADA requirements, we go above and beyond. So a variety of different things we do to make sure that we're a good fit in each of the communities that we go into.
So can you go back and speak to the issue of what noise is going to be emanating from the pumps?
Okay, so yes, back to the original question. Sorry, I didn't mean to rant on that. So for the original question, yes. So our pumps do present, they have a screen on them, the more modern ones. We have some older ones, but the newer ones have a screen on them. The screen does present a variety of information. Some of it is about promotions that we're having to provide to our customers. Some of it is as you're using the pump, the screen gives you different, cues as to what to do, whether you're using a credit card, how do you want a receipt, so on and so forth. So they provide information. They do provide some information that have a sound to it. What we've determined for our sound is that you don't hear it past the people that are operating that particular position. So if you were standing, anywhere from, I'd say, a typical car, is about, 7 feet, 8 feet wide. Beyond that point from a pump, you should not be hearing those operate. They're meant specifically for that fueling position. That's the volume that we use.
I have been to pumps before, not necessarily Wawa, but some pumps are loud, and they go way beyond. You can hear them as you approach the facility.
Yep. I've seen those kind. We don't. That's not, we've learned that is as neighbors have mentioned here, that it's a nuisance. We've discovered that, and that's why we have them at every single fueling position, because they're meant for just that fueling position, both in volume and in visibility.
And again, it's a lot different. If you're on the turnpike, no one cares if you're playing it at, whatever decibel. But if you're right next to someone's house, a different story.
Oh, understandable. Absolutely.
Is there a lighting impact to these screens? Is it quantifiable? I'm not an expert at this, but
You mean how much light the screens
they give
themselves?
off. Yeah.
I don't know if that would be anything more than what our lighting is already underneath the canopy. For instance, the LED lights that they provide are going to be probably brighter, and I mean, obviously they're downlit than what those screens would provide. I mean, they're not going to project anything beyond even the limits of probably the actual physical fueling position.
Thank you. I do want to follow up on one question, and our ordinance is very clear on fencing. Anything over 6 feet is going to require zoning hearing board approval. Are you requesting a taller fence?
Yes, yes, for sure.
Okay, and if you were to have free reign on what you wanted, how high would you request?
So given the height of the fuel pumps, that's what, 18 feet plus, we're looking 18 to 20 feet would be ideal to block the view from at least our second floor. It will not block the view from our third floor, but at a minimum block sound and light from entering our second floor of the property. Okay. And I think that's a consistent height with what the other neighbors also would prefer as well.
I'm not saying it could even happen, but nor would the applicant be willing to consider it, but just wanted to hear your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the bottom line, we do want to work with Wawa. We want to be good neighbors. We want to build a strong community with them. So we do appreciate the openness to continuing lines of conversation. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Marita Finley. My husband.
Hey, Dan Finley. We're directly adjacent to the property. We actually have the longest shared boundary with Wawa. And I appreciate all the comments that you've made from a resident's perspective. I mean, this is going to be a tremendous change in the neighborhood and directly impacts us. Just one comment to the other neighbors, comment on flipping it. We in fact, we're not in favor of flipping it because it would put the Wawa building almost right against our property line. So That was one of the considerations on that. Just to reiterate what the Stevens said, the best thing that you could do for this is to put a much larger wall along the back line where that fence is, where the vinyl fence is proposed. And we would like to see something similar to what you have on the highways, right? A 20-foot solid poured concrete attractive wall with then the landscaping softening that from our side of the property. I would like to, and we haven't had any conversations with Wawa, so we're glad you're there and are here, and would like to be able to work with you more proactively. I would really like to understand the path forward from here, right? The legal counsel said it's kind of a slam dunk. We're all providing input. There's a lot of comments on the plans that were submitted, a lot of them around light. Who defines nuisance to the neighboring property from what's going to be a heavily illuminated property, right? So we think a way to mitigate that would be a barrier wall and relooking at the lighting package that's involved. But can you answer the question on, like, what's the path forward from here? Everyone provides comments. You've provided a number of comments. How do we determine what's accepted, what the approval process is? Are we going to get answers to our suggestions?
So I'll take the first shot. We will, at a point, make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners as to proceeding with final plan approval, and then the Board of Commissioners will have to act on it.
So in a nutshell, that is the process. But I did just step down as chair, so my role here has changed. So there's really two paths forward. One, I think the applicant has secured a ruling using our court system. It's a favorable ruling to the applicant, and the applicant can proceed. There's a couple of probably speed bumps along the path of lighting. Obviously, there's some traffic issues that are still being considered, design review approval and whatnot. But I think really, and Mr. Spiegel spoke to this, I think Wawa should want to be a good neighbor here. And the fact that the applicant has not met with the neighbors is really shameful. They met with the neighbors this evening. And I think more input would be suggested here. Obviously, we can't make it a requirement, but I think Wawa, as a good neighbor, knows what the appropriate amount of neighbor input could be here, and I don't think you've met that standard. So clearly, there are two paths forward. I think we as commissioners, but also as Radnor residents, we're watching, and we hope that you choose the correct path. Now, I do want to caution the residents that there is a limit here to the amount of discussion that we can have. This has been a long process for the applicant, and they have a plan. It's approved. It's an approved plan, and I think they're willing to listen, but at the end of the day, it looks like there's going to be a Wawa in Wayne with gas pumps.
To clarify one point there about the process, that after this board or planning commission, the design review is a design review board that this will have to go in front of, that will focus on elevations, facades, materials, things of that nature. So that is another board that the applicant will have to come in front of. even if this were to kind of reach a point where the planning commission recommends approval from our standpoint. That's right.
And to add one more log on the fire, every board that we come in front of, the shade tree, design review, planning, we're all advisory. The people that have the power are the commissioners. Commissioners exercised that power in 2019 and were unable to stop this process. So we're talking about details here. We're not talking about the main event.
If I may, I just want to, again, thank everybody for your comments and your clear, obvious concern for the neighbors. And you hit it on the head, what you just said, Mr. Fruman, that at the end of the day, there's going to be a Wawa. Well, we were hearing that from day one. And we were in this impossible position as we're the house directly behind. So it's going to really impact us. You know, what is best for us and our family and our property, but what's best for the neighborhood. And we've just tried to be completely reasonable about everything, you know, from the beginning. And if somebody was within their legal rights to do something, to pursue something, then they had that right. So we very much, you know, appreciate our discussion with the applicant tonight. We, at this point, are just trusting in good faith. We really, really are. If I could just go on record, what I would like is a 20-foot wall. I believe that if, you know, it should be allowable. If there's going to be canopies and, you know, 18 feet, it should be 20 feet. I'd like it to be attractive for our property. We raised 7 children. I love it here. I don't want to move from Midland. I'm interested in all of my neighbors on Midland Avenue, because it's not just us. They're going to drive from Aberdeen up toward Lancaster Avenue, and I'd like for them to see something, a attractive wall that's covered by landscaping, because nothing's going to change the landscape of our neighborhood. If everybody driving everywhere in our neighborhood can see, you know, bright lights or just high canopies, but I believe, I really believe that it should happen. It can happen. It should be higher. Vinyl will not work. We have dealt with trash for 24 years now. We have dealt with rats for 24 years, just by being behind a gas station and a car wash. So I really believe, I have great faith that we had a great discussion tonight and that we can make this work, if in fact it's coming to this, that the lighting can be, will not obstruct everybody's paths, and we can get a very attractive wall. And that's what I'm asking for, and I thank you so much for everybody's help in making that happen.
Can I ask Wawa if you can present some properties that you've developed adjacent to residential with the gas pumps and what you've done that you're proud of to create that buffer? And I think it would be worth a field trip for, you know, some of us as we're trying to work together to come up with what the best solution is.
Well, we have.
Just send the addresses.
Oh yeah, we could absolutely do something like that. I mean, there's plenty of stores within just Delaware County alone that we have, that we brought up against the residential properties behind us, and we've done a variety of things. I would say mostly fencing and landscaping is probably the majority of them, but yeah, we can absolutely provide some locations for your review and, you know, go out and visit on.
Okay, thanks.
Demetrius Lambris, 300 Midland Avenue.
And Jennifer Lambris. Just for reference, we are the house across, we are the corner house of Aberdeen and Midland across from the Stevens who back up.
So just as a follow-up to Mr. Finley, so I grew up in the area. I'm actually excited to see something happen there, but we have to get it right. It's kind of a one-shot if we don't get it right. What is Radnor going to do on the after side if they don't get it right? So we're looking at traffic flow. If you look at here and here and here, it's already the Pocono Raceway on the weekends. I mean, cars are flying down there at 1,000 miles an hour. So let's say everything goes through as is and it gets worse. What's Radnor prepared to do in the aftermath should it fail?
Since we're speaking of plans that are definitely happening, the plans that will happen from our end as people living there, noticing and maybe not collecting the data behind there. Who's going to be collecting further data? Are we going to be reactive to an event happening to collect such data to make those changes? Or as a township and, you know, everybody involved in it going to be proactive and say, this is our next plan? Like the Finleys brought up, I mean, where are we going from here in terms of Wawa? It's happening, but the concern with the traffic of pedestrians as well as cars is going to increase. I mean, the numbers and the traffic flow, I'm a math teacher, I didn't go through the exact numbers, but I mean, easily quadrupling, and there's going to be further meetings about it when that's there. So I just question, like, being new to all this, and we just moved in 23, so this is 2 years in, and we knew that there was going to be a Wawa there. We were aware of it, but not part of those discussions. We just want to know, as informed neighbors, like, what would be our step to plan after?
In response to that, I guess, could we have the gentleman who spoke to the traffic study please just come back up for a few clarifying questions? In some of the traffic study that you discussed, I guess, first off, the entrance to the drive aisle on Aberdeen, is that in line with the sort of buffer that's in that half-circle drive of St. Catherine's, or is it across from one of the either entrance or exit to that half circle?
It's across from that half circle.
Is it across from the buffer that's in the middle of that half circle, though, or is it?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any, or has there been any consideration and discussion about the right turn lane and pedestrian walkways, about a raised pedestrian crosswalk across Aberdeen, either in that area or down at the intersection of Midland and Aberdeen, to sort of slow traffic and alleviate some of the concerns?
So I think the concern, from what I've heard, was that Radnor Police wants that straight through. So because that's their route at night.
Without
a raised or a
traffic
speed
bump,
bump.
is that?
I haven't had those conversations with the police. What I would say is that between the two options that you've presented, I would not be in favor of a raised crosswalk in the middle of Aberdeen, i.e. mid-block crosswalk. It's not something that the drivers would expect for something like that to be there, considering there's a signal just directly at the intersection, which would provide for pedestrian crossings on all four legs, as well as the push buttons and like, as well as, you know, at Midland and Aberdeen, where you have pedestrian crossings as well. So I think it would be something that would be unexpected. But I haven't had any conversations with the police to say whether or not they would be in favor.
So the question again is, aside from just this plan, what's happening in the parallel streets? What is Radnor doing to prevent some of the flow that's going to happen? So you'll have people not only coming through here, you'll have people coming a block in, which is a one-way off of Lancaster now, coming into Midland, Pembroke, and then they'll be going up Midland, turning around up Orchard, where the middle school is. So what's happening now? That's the bigger question, not just on this project, but because of this project, what is happening around it? And then eventually, who knows, we might have another CVS in the following corner, so what's going to happen?
Yeah, right. I mean, where my head goes when you ask kind of what Radnor would do about it is towards sort of traffic calming measures that would sort of dissuade drivers from wanting to take that route, such as speed tables or other raised platforms. I recognize that sort of maybe it's not a mid-block crossing, but at that intersection, a raised platform, while maybe unexpected, is not completely sort of, not done elsewhere, right? When growing up in Radnor Township towards Bryn Mawr Hospital area, there's a very kind of unexpected pedestrian crosswalk in the middle of Bryn Mawr Avenue to go from the parking garage across the street, but it's a very safe crosswalk from what I kind of could tell as just a regular resident, with certain features and curbs and delineated crosswalks. So just not sure if that's been considered for some of the surrounding kind of pedestrian traffic in the studies that you've considered.
Yeah, it hasn't been something that's been considered. Like I said, we've gone, what I feel like have gone to pretty great lengths to provide for a pedestrian network through this area. That's an improvement upon what exists today, but also has direct, safe pedestrian routes, albeit with some minor changes on the corner that I mentioned earlier, but to get those pedestrians in the site safely and also circulate around the site.
Yeah, I don't disagree with
My question is
that.
not so much within the site. My question is past that, on the parallel streets, because all the kids are not just going to be hanging out on the corner and just going to Wawa. They'll be coming from 4 blocks away, right? So and I don't think that's your study. It's more so Radnor's study.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, right? I mean, I made a note earlier to commend you on sort of, regardless of the use of this site, whether it's a Wawa, whether it's a 4-story apartment building, whatever it was, drive aisles further away from the lighted intersection, pedestrian sidewalks that kind of come into the site and are intentional, that don't kind of require duplicate use of a driveway or a parking lot, are positive signs, right? As is sort of the landscaping along Lancaster and Aberdeen and things like that.
Right.
So, yeah, I do commend you on what's been done sort of in that direct proximity to the site, regardless of what was to fill kind of the interior, surface area. It's just some of these considerations for the traffic from a pedestrian focus.
Understood.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question, and actually this was brought up by our commissioner, and I've been talking to our traffic consultant for their traffic consultant. So there's going to be a dedicated right-hand turn lane, and the other lane, obviously there's not enough room to have a dedicated left-hand turn lane. But when you're in with PennDOT, can the request be made to have a dedicated left-hand turn phase, right? And maybe that would help. So people are worried about. So I hate to say it, so I use the car wash, and I know what they're talking about, right? So the idea is, if you're going to make a left on the Lancaster, you don't go there, you go to the signalized intersection, right? That's the proper method. And maybe that would be more enticing if there was, like, at eastbound 30 at North Wayne, we have that, right? There's 2 lanes, it's straight left, and at the beginning of the cycle, you get a few seconds to make a left-hand turn. Can we ask you to investigate that with PennDOT?
Absolutely. I would say that the likelihood of an arrow on the Aberdeen approaches is unlikely because it's a shared through left. One option would be an advance phase, but I would tell you that the likelihood is PennDOT's going to more focus themselves on Lancaster Avenue than they are going to be on Aberdeen.
They always do, but I have faith in you.
So, but what I would say is, regardless of all of that, when we are into, which we've started, but when we get into more detailed design plans for the PennDOT process, PennDOT will require us to look at that intersection and determine what improvements are necessary to make that intersection work as safely and efficiently as possible. And if that's left turn arrows on Lancaster Avenue, if that's an advanced phase on Aberdeen, those type of things, all of that will be considered and all of that's on the table. But just for everyone's, I know left turn arrows were brought up, but just for everyone's education, PennDOT requires that you meet certain thresholds of traffic before they'll allow you to install an arrow. And when developers go into, or even municipalities, when they go into PennDOT to seek approval and make modifications to a traffic signal, PennDOT has you look at all of those various options of how to improve the intersection. The other thing I would mention is that from a traffic flow perspective, and it's likely very difficult for everyone to envision this, I totally get it, but the township is looking to install a traffic adaptive system along Lancaster Avenue. Once that system is installed, and I don't know the timing on the system, we've agreed to participate in helping the township on that system. But that will be an improvement to how traffic flows on Route 30, and if you can, or on Lancaster Avenue, and if you can improve how traffic flows on Lancaster Avenue, you're going to improve how traffic flows on the side streets as well.
When will that system be in place? Because earlier you said that the developer will provide the equipment at that intersection.
The developers agreed to provide that equipment at the intersection.
That doesn't make, I mean, if if you don't have the equipment from either from North Wayne all the way down to St. David's or whatever the range.
So,
of
Mr.
the
Nat, that's a
nursing-
township project,
That's a-
right?
Oh, that's a township
Right, so
project?
that, the traffic adaptive system is phase 2 of a traffic adaptive system we already have installed. Part of it
Okay.
going east, part of it going west. So we plan to be bidding that in February, and this is with township money as well as a grant, and it's done under the auspices of PennDOT because of the grant.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Orsini.
Bless you.
I did have another question regarding the fencing.
Well, just quickly before you leave on that left turn, a little support for you. I actually tonight on the, it's shown at the top corner there, the opposite out. I made a left coming out from, I actually did the Chick-fil-A CVS run on the way here myself, and I frequently use that intersection coming out Aberdeen, either going left for Water Ice or right for CVS. I do think, while I agree that a left arrow would be is what most need, what I've observed and experienced and saw again tonight, the worst problem is actually the other way coming out, people coming out of the Chick-fil-A, et cetera, lot onto North Aberdeen and coming down to that intersection. That was backed up all the way up through the underpass. And I was like opposite that, so I got in and out, and when the light changed, I easily made the left out. I know it's difficult because I've used the car wash too, and at certain times of the day, it's impossible, but that, you know, that's kind of traffic. It is certainly looks better and just intuitively seems that it would flow better. And just, well, before you go to the wall thing, the thing that came to mind on that is the old adage of good fences make good neighbors, and I think that would be the biggest thing that Wawa could focus on to make a lot of people in this room happy.
Okay. So Nick or whoever from your team had a question on the east side of the property, okay, near Verizon, is that going to have a fence of some type as well?
No, I don't believe it does, right?
No fence.
No, it's just open.
Okay. And is that the trash in the middle of?
No, the trash enclosure is in the
Okay.
southeast corner.
Okay.
What's in the middle is the tire pressure, the tire air pumps.
Does that trash system have a compaction system to it? And can you speak to sort of the trash route for pickup and schedule?
So it does not have, I don't believe it has a compactor to it. Oh, it does? Okay, yeah, there is a
The trash has a compactor with it. The
Yeah,
recycle bin does
that would
not.
be here, and then the pickup is essentially, we showed that route. Actually, I'm sorry, we don't have that on there, but essentially, he would come in off of Lancaster, circle around, pull up, pick up the trash, and then go back out to Lancaster.
Something like that should be in the development agreement if we make it come. Go back to the people that own it back.
On the offered traffic improvements, the right turn lane, the potential to restrict right turn from trucks off of Aberdeen into the Wawa. I guess just clarification on sort of the commitment to those elements of the plan. Are those committed to with sort of current discussions, or is that something that's still subject to change with the PennDOT review?
So I would say that what I've discussed in terms of recommendations from a traffic improvement perspective, the right turn off of Aberdeen into the driveway for the tractor trailers is something that just was mentioned in one of the review letters, which we've agreed to provide. But everything that I've mentioned today is on the table, what we've offered. I would caveat that with the fact that we are subject to PennDOT review and approval as well. So PennDOT may have some modifications to some of the parameters, at least from the traffic signal design or maybe the pedestrian design, at least at the intersection, not so much on Aberdeen or internal, but more so up at the intersection of Aberdeen and Lancaster. But with that said, I would mention that a lot of this has been vetted with PennDOT previously, and that right turn lane that you see is not a right turn lane that's necessarily solely because of the Wawa. It's a right turn to help, we control the frontage and we have the ability to widen through that area and provide that lane. So that was something that PennDOT wanted to see at that intersection to help progress traffic through. So always the possibility of slight modifications due to PennDOT, but PennDOT is limited to Lancaster Avenue and the signalized intersection.
So had a question. I think somewhere it's addressed as to when fuel deliveries are made and when food deliveries are made. Is there some type of restriction as to when that occurs? And then is there a restriction as to when the trash pickup occurs, and where is that?
I'm not aware of the trash restriction, but I do know that this is outlined in the Gilmore review letter, that there is a restriction for tractor trailer deliveries between 7 and 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m.
That's by code?
That's...
So that was requested to not have the deliveries at the same time the peak hours are,
Right.
where most of the people are coming into a facility such as a Wawa for either coffee or dinner time.
Right, so that's just an ask. Is that just a request?
That is a request, and it may also be required by PennDOT on the Lancaster Avenue. I don't recall if that was in their review letter.
Okay, so this is a question maybe for staff. Is there a way to specify, restrict times for either fuel or food, the tractor trailer deliveries as well as the trash?
I would recommend that the deliveries, trash pickup, and tractor trailer or fuel be restricted at those same times, the 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m.
And where would that appear? Is that some kind of development agreement? Is
That would be a process where you would make that recommendation along with whatever recommendation you make regarding the plan.
And then the Board of Commissioners could adopt it as part of their plan approval as a condition of approval.
Okay. And if I may, I think the request was to place a note on the plans, so there will be a note on the plans restricting those deliveries.
And what was the restriction on the deliveries?
7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m.
So just to clarify, that means from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. deliveries are allowed?
Correct.
Overnight, 6 p.m. to 7 a.m.?
Correct.
Okay, but I mean, those are restrictions. Restricted, don't make any deliveries during breakfast or dinner. Is that what you're saying?
During the peak time periods, correct.
Don't make deliveries.
Restrict deliveries during the peak time periods.
Right. So you can have deliveries at 1 or 2 and 3 in the morning.
You could potentially, sure, yes.
Okay. Is that a good idea?
I mean, I would just comment that most gas stations, I believe, receive their fuel deliveries sometime when most of us are asleep.
Well, I can tell you my experience in working on these type of facilities is that the fuel deliveries are very difficult to restrict. Obviously, 7 to 9, 4 to 6, that's an option, but restricting it further is difficult in the fact that those are made on an as-needed basis. So once the underground storage tanks get to a certain level, there's an alarm alerted to the delivery company, which requires them to go out and provide delivery of fuel to the facility. So it could be within an hour, it could be within 2 hours, or whatever that may be.
So there's really like 3 buckets then. There's fuel, which you want to set aside and say that's as needed whenever you need it. But then
Fuel is as needed, correct.
right, food is not.
Correct. And as I mentioned earlier, it's my understanding that from this food, from the deliveries to the stores, typically about once a week on those large tractor trailers. You'll see the Coke and Pepsi trucks come in, the HERS trucks, they'll come in on a more regular basis, but those larger delivery trucks would be about once a week for the store.
So is there a way to prevent deliveries from occurring when people are sleeping next door?
That's beyond my pay grade. I don't know that what the ability to do so is or is not.
Do we know the current sort of fuel delivery cadence at the site? Obviously as needed, but approximately kind of how frequent or what hours of the day?
I don't know the answer to that, no.
What about the trash?
I don't know that there's any potential, how many times a week?
I guess what I'm saying is, we have folks here who live their bedrooms backing up to this.
Completely understand.
I'll speak for them. If I were them, I wouldn't want you doing that and waking me up at night.
You could, listen,
Understood.
with Republic or Waste Management, you could tell them what time, what day, when you want to have, and the frequency of your trash removal. So that's an operations issue.
Our trash is during the day. Our trash pickups are during the day, trash and recyclables.
Okay.
If you've ever been to Wawa on Wayne, you know it's right in the middle of the day.
Okay, there, so we have our answer.
Okay, staff, do you have any more comments, concerns, questions at the moment?
No, sir.
Okay.
Yes, I do have one. If the applicant could please provide an updated title report. The one lease that I have is from 2018.
Okay. So we've had a lot of discussion tonight. There's issues that we'll just say are still open, including particular lighting, fencing, discussion with neighbors. Am I leaving anything out? Okay.
Maturity of the planted trees?
Trees. It would be, my view that we should table for tonight. Is that?
I understand.
Okay.
Before we make a motion here, I think there's an opportunity here if we do table, there's an opportunity to have further discussions with the neighbors, including the most affected neighbors. And I think as a good neighbor, you'd want to do that.
Yeah, and MJ, just to clarify, we had numerous meetings with neighbors during this process prior to, not since the approval from the court, but prior to the court approval.
Yeah, and I think, out of respect to the applicant, you've come a long way, and you've earned a victory in our court system. So I think the parameters of your meetings have changed a little bit, but I want you to understand that, if you do come up with some alternatives for us to consider, maybe zoning to consider, I don't want to indicate that we love the idea of the fencing, but certainly, we're going to listen to the neighbors. If you do have some alternatives for us to consider, we'd be open to at least hearing them out. Let's just say that.
Okay. Could I have a motion?
Yeah, with that being said, in the matter of yeah, thank you. The matter of Wawa Food Market, 302 and 306 East Lancaster Ave, I'd like to make a motion to table.
Second.
All in favor? Oh.
Aye.
Aye.
Old habits. All right, it's unanimous.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe we have no old business or new business, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Sorry.